Hi, everybody. Let's do IXL 7th grade C12, add and subtract integers. And I want everyone to do this in a particular way so that I know that you're not just typing all of these problems into a calculator. So you're going to have to follow these instructions, which I wrote over here and which I will follow myself as I make this video for you. And just make sure that you're doing the problems in the way that I'm going to do them so that I know that you actually worked through them yourself, because you're going to have to take a photo of the work that you showed and send it, the work that you did, and send it to me. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is the problem. We're going to write the problem, and if we need to do any rewriting, we'll do it in this section. Number two is we're going to do the work. We're going to do the necessary addition or subtraction. And number three is we'll write the final answer. Okay, so I'm going to write over here. Oops. So this is what you're going to write on your paper. You're going to write problem. You don't have to write the word problem for every single one. You can just write it at the top, and then, well, that's not writing very, hopefully your handwriting is better than mine. Okay. Okay, so the problem is -5 plus 5. Okay, I know that you can see it right over here, but I'm writing it again because this is the work that you're going to show me when you do these problems. Okay, now, so that's the problem. Do I have to do any rewriting here? No, I don't, because these symbols are not right next to each other. Now, what is the work that I need to do? Should I be doing addition or subtraction? Well, if you can't remember, then you can go over and just check the reference pages, okay? So the reference pages are right over here in the classwork section. So I'll click on the reference pages, and then negatives are on page 5. So let's scroll down to page 5. And here they are. So you can read a little bit just to remind yourself about using the number line. But what I'm going to use in these videos are the rewriting rules and the adding and subtracting rules. So I didn't need to rewrite for the problem that I had, but I will need to use these adding subtracting rules, okay, which are really more important when the first number is negative, right? And my first number here is negative, so I'm going to use those rules. And they say, what should I do if they tell me what I should do if I have the same symbols or different symbols? And here I have different symbols. So the rule is I'm going to subtract and take the symbol of the larger number, okay? So let's get this back. So what's the work that I'm going to do? The work that I'm going to do is subtraction. I just read that from the reference page because I have different symbols over here. So I'm going to write 5 minus 5, which is 0. And then the last thing to do is to decide if my answer is positive or negative. But in this case, I just got 0. So 0 is neither positive or negative. So my final answer here is going to be just 0. Okay? Normally, after I do subtraction, I would take the sign in front of the larger number. But of course, these numbers are the same, so there is no larger number here. Okay, let's do the next problem. And by the way, that one also made sense if you just think of a number line. If you start at -5, and then since it was -5 plus 5, which means you go 5 spaces to the right, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you would end up at 0, right? Okay, so let's do the next problem. 1 plus -1, so let's write it out. Okay, and we do need to rewrite here. So I said in my instructions, if you need to rewrite anything, do it here. So what I mean by do it here is do it under, where you wrote the word problem. Let's just do it in this area. So plus negative is going to turn into, you know what, I forgot. So what am I going to do? I'm going to check the reference pages. So, here it is. If I see plus and negative right next to each other, I will turn that into a minus symbol. right? Because adding a negative is like subtracting a positive. So in this example, adding -3 is the same as subtracting +3. And in my example, uh, adding -1 is the same thing as subtracting +1. And of course, nothing happens to this first number, so that would stay the same. So I have 1 minus 1 there. Now the work that I'm going to do here, again, you could look at the reference page, but if your first number is a positive number, then there's really no need, okay? If your first number is a positive number, then there's no need, I should say, to use those adding, subtracting rules, okay? With same signs, add and keep the symbol, different signs, subtract and take the symbol of the larger number. If your first number is positive here, you're just going to do the work normally. So the work that I would do is 1 minus 1, which of course is 0. Oh, I got another 0 answer. Okay, so my final answer is 0 there. All right. 1 plus -1 is 0. And again, that makes sense because when you add a negative, then you move down the number line. So if I start at +1 and then I go down one space, I would end up at 0. Okay. 1 plus 5. All right. So the problem that I'm going to write is just what I see there. I like it like that. Okay. 1 plus 5. The work that I'm going to do is, again, this is not a tricky problem. Okay, this is not a problem where you have to think of same symbols, different symbols. Really, if your first number is positive, you're just going to do the work normally. The only exception is if you're doing subtraction and you're taking a larger number away from a smaller number, then you would have to remember to make your answer negative. That's really the only trick, but this is just 1 plus 5. So I'll just do it over here. I wrote 5 plus 1, which is the same as 1 plus 5. I just like getting in the habit of writing the bigger number on top, which honestly doesn't matter for addition, but I like to get in that habit because for subtraction it does matter. So, but this is addition, so I'll just do 5 plus 1 is 6, and my final answer, of course, is positive 6, right? Okay, okay, good. I'm glad that we got a problem like this, because this is what I was talking about before. Okay, so the problem is 1 minus 3. The work that I'm going to show, again, if my first number is a positive number, then I'm just going to do the operation that I see here, okay? As opposed to if my first number was a negative number and I had -1 minus 3, I would actually be doing addition over here. Okay. Or if my first number was a negative number and this was addition, I would actually be doing subtraction over here. But if my first number is a positive number, then I'm just going to do the same operation that I see right over here, and which in this case is subtraction. But the only thing that I have to be careful of is when I'm subtracting a bigger number away from a smaller number, my final answer is going to be negative. Okay, and you don't have to write a number line on your paper, but just to show you here, if I do 1 minus 3, then that means I'm starting at +1 and I'm going 3 spaces to the left. So 1, 2, 3. I know that my final answer is going to be negative, okay? Um, but let's pretend that we didn't do that on the number line. Let's work it out here. Always, 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 when I'm doing subtraction, I need to put the bigger number on top. So I'll do 3 minus 1, which is 2. And then for my final answer, I simply have to remember that since I was really taking the bigger number away from the smaller one, my final answer should be a -2, just like you saw on the number line a few seconds ago. All right, so so that was a -2. And let's continue with the next problem. 4 minus -2. Okay, let's go through it a little faster. The problem is 4 minus negative 2. I'm going to rewrite here because I see minus negative right next to each other. So that's going to give me 4 plus 2. If you can't remember the rewriting rules or any of the rules, then go over to the reference pages, okay? Negatives is on page 5. The work that I'm going to do is just 4 plus 2, okay? Which is 6, and there are no tricks here. This is like an elementary school problem now. 4 plus 2 is positive 6, right? Okay, let's see. So I think I'm going to jump a level and see if I get any problems. Okay, so these are really the same type of thing. The only difference with this level in this IXL exercise, I guess, is now I have a double-digit number, but it's the same. It's really the same thing. So the problem is negative 7 minus negative 25. Okay, so if I have any rewriting to do, I'm going to do it over here underneath where I wrote the word problem. So minus negative is going to turn into plus. So now I have negative 7 plus 25. Okay, now I have to be careful because my first number is negative. So I'm going to have to use those adding subtracting rules, which tell me that if I have different symbols, I'm going to subtract and take the symbol in front of the larger number. Now I have my bigger number here, let's just ignore the symbols for a second. The bigger number here is 25. So I'm going to put the 25 on top. Remember, when you do the subtraction, you always have to put the bigger number on top. All right? Actually, I don't. Well, you know what? I'll just leave that there for a second. I'll reveal them later. So 25 minus 7. So I can't take 7 away from 5. I'll borrow from the 2. That becomes a 1. Put a 1 next to the 5, making it a 15. 15 minus 7 is 8. And then 1 minus nothing is 1. Now for my final answer, now I'm going to reveal what I scribbled out before. Because remember, the rule is different symbols subtract. We did that. And then take the symbol in front of the larger number. So the larger number here is a 25. Oh, I revealed it too soon. But anyway, the symbol that I had in front of the 25 was the plus symbol, which tells me that my final answer is positive. Okay, so that's going to be a positive 18. And again, it makes sense. I'm not requiring you to draw a number line as you do these problems, but it makes sense if you think about a number line, because if I start at negative 7, and then if I'm adding 25, I move to the right 25 spaces, then I would certainly go past 0, and I would be in this positive territory over here. Okay, and where exactly would I end up? You could count it yourself, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, but you would end up at positive 18. Okay, so this final answer should make sense to you. So I'll put it in here. Submit. Okay, and all right, let me skip ahead to the next level. Is there anything different here? Okay, not really. So this is pretty much the same, but actually I don't think that we had a problem exactly like this before. So let me do this one. Negative 5 minus 3. So I do not have to rewrite because these symbols are not right next to each other. But my first number is a negative number, which means that I should be remembering that rule, same symbols, add and keep the symbols. So these are the same symbols, even though they mean different things, because in this context, this right here means negative and this means subtraction, but it's the same symbol for both times, right? Both of these are just little dashes. So same symbols, add. Okay, a lot of students when they do this, they keep this negative here and they'll put a negative, and it just looks, incredibly messy. So you don't need to do that. In fact, don't do that. Okay, I'm telling you, do not do that. We're just going to set up an easy problem like you saw in elementary school. So we're just adding 5 plus 3 here, which is 8. okay? But the rule is same symbols add, which I just did, and keep the symbol. So which symbol should I keep? Well, it doesn't matter because they're both the same symbol, right? So the symbol is this little dash, which now in the context of my final answer means negative. So my final answer is a -8. So remember, add, same symbols, add, and then keep the symbol, all right? Okay, so let's move on. -45 plus 2. All right, so just thinking about this for a second, the answer should be a negative, right? If I think of a number line, if I start on the number line all the way at -45, and then I only move to the right 2 spaces, 1, 2, I'm still going to be in negative territory. Okay, so it's a good idea to think about a number line as you're doing these problems. So I know my answer's got to be negative, but let's just go through it. -45 plus 2. I don't have to rewrite here because, again, these symbols are not right next to each other. The work that I'm going to do, I have different symbols. So the rule is different symbols subtract and take the symbol in front of the larger number. I wrote the number with the greater absolute value, meaning I'm just going to ignore these symbols for a second. And even though this was a -45, I'm just going to look at it as 45. But anyway, I apologize. I'm getting ahead of myself here. So let's do the first part of that rule, which is to subtract. So I'm going to put the bigger number on top, which was 45, the smaller number below, and I'll subtract them. And I'll get 43 here. Now, again, the rule says take the symbol in front of the larger number. And I'm just going to focus on, if I ignore these symbols for a second and just focus on the absolute values, 45 and 2, which number is bigger, 45 or 2? Well, 45 is bigger. Now I'm going to remember the symbol that was in front of the 45 was that negative symbol. So my final answer is going to be negative. Not -45 though, -43, which is what we worked out when we did the subtraction. Okay, and that makes sense also if you think about a number line. Ooh, I did that by hand. That came out pretty straight, huh? So if I think about a number line, that should make sense because if I start at -45 on the number line and then I add 2, so I just move to the right 2 spaces, 1, 2, then this would be a -43 over here. Remember, starting from 0, the negative numbers go -1, -2, -3, -4. So this would be -43, -44, -45. So if I start here and go 2 spaces to the right, I would end up at -43. So all of this stuff that we did over here, it gives me an answer which makes sense. And I'm probably, let's see, do I want to do any more questions? Because they're pretty much, that's a tough one, right? 3 plus 1. They're pretty much all the same. Are the questions in the challenge zone any different? No, not really, just bigger numbers, but it's the same idea for all of them. So I'm going to end the video there. Remember, do the work as all of this problem, work, final answer. Do all of this as I've done in this video. You don't have to write the number line, but show me what you're doing on paper so I know that you didn't just get the answer off of a calculator. By all means, if you want to use a calculator just to check to see if your answer is correct, then go ahead. You can do that. I don't mind, but show me all of the writing that you're doing as well. Okay, have a great day.